I think Jon Favreau, the director, and writer.
I don't know if
Chris
he did
Columbus.
both.
I forget who's director.
I know I thought he directed it.
He might have.
I don't know if it was before or after Iron Man, but he had a heck of a run.
But they had a pretty lean budget, I think. For Elf.
That's what I'm saying. It was like
it was
literally
out in New York.
It wasn't.
Like just no permits, I think.
Right. Yeah,
just
out walking through traffic, and people were just like, "What is happening?"
That'd be so funny to actually see Will Ferrell.
They got
in
some
that
good people for it, though. James Caan.
Yeah.
I forget what's her name from New Girl, who we're all in love with. Zooey Deschanel. Yes. Yeah. Sister of Emily Deschanel of Bones fame.
Of what?
Bones.
Oh,
she was Dr. Bones.
I couldn't really get into Bones as a show.
Wonderful.
I watched like 2-3 episodes and I was like,
anthropological,
just can't seem to get into it.
Forensic science via the fake Smithsonian Institute, something like that. They had their own version of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I have a hard time for some reason starting certain shows. Like, I thought The West Wing was interesting because they just like jump right into it and they didn't introduce any characters in a traditional kind of sense.
Yeah.
They did, but it was very well written and hidden. Shows like Bones, for some reason, didn't really resonate with me, and I'm not sure why. And it's been a long time since I watched it.
They're all episodic, but you're saying one that's like, here's the introductory season, here's these characters, and then we're going to do the story? Or
yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to work this out in real time. Like, what other shows? I think Suits is super popular right now, and for some reason that one also, for some reason, it's just like not latching on.
Is it
here, can I say this? Because I think I might answer the question. I just thought about this. I had the same reaction to Schitt's Creek.
Fair.
Did you ever watch it?
Yeah.
Okay. So
it's
Schitt's
another
Creek
show you can watch out of order, and there's overarching, but you're like, oh
yeah. But like Schitt's Creek, because the writing was unique. Mm-hmm. There was just a whole lot going on with Moira's accent, sort of like always evolving.
Yes.
Trying to figure out like what is this real dynamic that's going on with these rich people in this poor town now, and there was just something about that show that took me a handful of episodes where I started, it warmed up, or I warmed up to it. I should frame it that way. And then as soon as like it all made sense in my brain, I was totally into it.
I think it just hits with
I don't understand why I have a barrier there.
Like sometimes you have a couple episodes that draw you in, or if you have the chutzpah to make it through those couple of episodes, and could be like, you know what, so many people like this, I have to try. Or if that first one really draws you in. I think like Blue-Eyed Samurai, that was
never saw it.
It's wonderful.
What is it?
It's like a mixture of Quentin Tarantino and Samurai Jack. So it's like a few different genres based off of not like a true story, more like a folktale of Japan, of like the white child of invaders kind of thing after they'd shut their borders.
Interesting.
And so she's seen as, first of all, it's not introduced that she's a woman. But she's introduced as a character that is shunned and looked upon as a demon, like so out of place, so disgusting within that society. And then she's fighting her way back to, I guess, avenge the idea of her even being born. It's out there. It's wonderful.
Do you find yourself when you watch shows or movies that they're somehow related to whatever season of life you're in or that moment?
I can't say I seek out shows for that reason. Sometimes I seek them out for the nostalgia of them, right? So maybe it's like a callback, and I want to be in that headspace again that I was.
Okay.
Like Samurai Jack, I just mentioned, that's a great example. Like I remember, I always say his name, like Yendi Tartakovsky, I think it is. He did like Clone Wars and a few other things. But going back, he's wonderful. I think he did Dexter's Lab, like those kind of Cartoon Network stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
But he did Samurai Jack, which is just this piece of art, this episodic piece of art of this journey of a samurai through time. And I think it keyed on me when I was a kid, or whatever age I was when it came on. But I didn't pay attention to it wholly. I was just like, this is super cool, but I don't have time. I'm at school doing stuff.
Was this on like Adult Swim or something?
Yes.
Was this? Okay.
Yeah, it was on Toonami and Adult Swim or whatever mixture it is. And so when it just occurred to me later on, this like, man, I really loved that. I got to go back to that and pay attention to it and give it its due diligence. And I came back and just enjoyed it even more. Like, I think you pay attention to the story. If you're a normal person, I think I went back and was like, God, this is beautiful. They did this so darn well.
Do you think you changed, or do you think it was like you as a person, a personality have changed? Or do you think like just maturity and time passing, now you just have like more awareness to kind of follow more lines?
Both. I think I was pretty overly mature at an early age.
Okay.
There's a weird dichotomy in me in that I was very mature in and around high school, but the dichotomy of that is like maybe I'm stunted as a 17 or 18 year old. So I'm a very mature 17 or 18 year old right now. So I love hearkening back to Blink-182 and the cartoons that I was watching at that time. Yeah. That's all a callback right now. It's comfort food. So I think that especially right now, I've been talking about that lately when I'm getting back into, working for myself, those things that inspire me. That's what I'm calling back to right now. Those cartoons, that music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to see Blink whenever they come here in August?
I don't know if I'm that. It's funny. I think I have that relationship with Weezer more than I do Blink-182. But I think, to your point, I should probably go back and experience it firsthand again or something like that. There was, I think the hardest rocking show I ever went to was Against Me. I can't remember where that was. It might have been the Wiltern back in Los Angeles. That was a time. I think I got hit by a shoe in like a mosh pit that I didn't want to be in. And then at one point I retreated all the way to the back, and I think I still got hit by something. I wasn't even in the show or the ballroom anymore. I got hit by like the concession stand with a drink. So, which really means it was rock and roll, I think, at that point.
I've never been in an environment like that.
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. And I was a complete introvert. So to be in there was like this daring thing. But, deep down, I really wanted to experience it and be part of that world. Yeah. So I was like, this is great. I think I was excited by being hit by the shoe.
The shoe?
Like, this is great. Like all the textures are matching up. This is wonderful.
Yeah, I think there's shows like Frasier, The West Wing, probably primarily those two for me. Well, or even Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. Those three, I think, are like, I'm in a weird rotation with those at all times.
Well, it's comfort food again,
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm somebody that has some trauma in my past, and I think I know there is, this sensation you get from watching this comfortable show that you've seen before. You know what's going to happen. You still enjoy the storyline and the characters interacting, but it's, and I keep saying it, man, but it's comfort food. It's something that feeds your soul, and it's not necessarily the one you have on in the background, like there's the noise while you're working. But to have that going on and just be like, this is cool, and really appreciate that writing, like The West Wing, that you talk about seasons of life. You can watch that show from so many different perspectives, and it may or may not be a political spectrum. It may just be a maturity spectrum, or like, that particular subject maybe doesn't pertain to me now, but I'm interested in it now. And so it just hits you, like all these different things coming at you. Yeah.
I think for me, in a lot of ways, it's the open expression of emotion. I think that like resonates with me. So you have The West Wing, and you have those very touching moments in the middle of the chaos of The West Wing and political life and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden there's this other thing that happens, like President Bartlett giving Charlie the family knife from Paul Revere, for example. like that moment of like, oh, this was made for me by Boston silversmith named Paul Revere. Like that's how he said it. And the language and how he says it, in the way that you uncover the information, like the punchline is, oh, this is from Paul Revere.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that Paul Revere is the last thing you hear in the writing, like just how smoothly all of that kind of goes together.
Are we talking about that show, or are we talking about Aaron Sorkin? Who from Sports Night On kind of can smack you over the head with good writing.
It's probably a Sorkin. I mean, obviously he left after season 4, so the writing changed.
Fair.
But and those moments really didn't exist much after Sorkin. So it probably is a Sorkin thing, but I think it just comes back to, two people having a moment that's interesting to me.
I think when you key upon the human experience within this grander story that you're trying to tell, it's honesty speaking through the thing, because you talk about Bartlett being this kind of giant figure. I think when he showed that he was human, or the character showed that he was human, that was the most believable part of the whole thing. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So honesty when it shows up every now and again.
Yeah. Vulnerability as well.
Yes.
You get Fraser Crane, who elevates himself.
Is he vulnerable?
I think so. Yeah. I think he is a character. I think it's funny we're going down this path talking all this, but I think it's good because I think he tries to always live a life that really he doesn't live.
Fair.
He's twice divorced or something, left in the altar.
I don't remember.
Divorced.
Well, no, BB something is his ex. I forget her character's name.
Oh my gosh.
She's a great
Of course,
character.
now you're going to put me out the spot. Now
the actress's name is
or
BB
her name is BB. That's right. BB was his agent throughout the show as well. So that's what I was thinking. Oh my gosh.
Because it becomes like the Newman of the show. She's coming.
Why am I... Lilith. That's
Lilith.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Lilith.
So they got divorced. He was left on the altar by... Was it Diane?
Oh, man.
From Cheers?
No, I'm going to have
Remember,
to...
he's from Cheers. Right? And then he was a carryover and
Cheers.
made his own thing. Anyway, it's just one of those, he and his brother, the first thing that you see from Niles in the first episode is how fussy he is,
So he's
just how elevated they are. And
he's the more cloistered version.
Yeah. But I think at the same time, he's a little bit more approachable somehow. And obviously they evolve over the course of 9, 11 seasons, whatever it was.
Niles on one side and his father on the other, the two pieces of the spectrum. And then Daphne comes in like a wrecking ball.
Yeah.
Breaks up the whole time.
Yeah, the writing is just, it's crazy. It's hard. It's easy to get sucked into the episode and some of the slapstick kind of 90s elements of it. But I think if you kind of look beyond that, there's a lot of substance there. There's
revisit that.
There's the episode of him getting an award in Dr. Tewksbury. You can see how many times I've been through this.
I remember the
show.
Name. Jeez.
Yeah. Character names just for some reason stick with me on this show more than names in real life. It's funny.
Oh, no, absolutely. Come on. We can name all these Star Wars characters, but I can't remember the person I just met 5 minutes ago.
Right.
Sorry to the person I just met 5 minutes ago.
5 seconds ago.
Yeah.
But he has that moment of getting an award, and he got a note from his former professor, Tewksbury, that said something, "You must be very proud." And I remember this scene because it was interesting phrasing and word choice, which is what Fraser got stuck on. Was, why did you say you must be very proud?
It would have destroyed
where does that
me.
come from?
It would have destroyed me to receive something like that.
Yeah.
It would have been like, is he okay?
Yeah, not I'm very proud of you, but you must be very proud.
I mean, it was a large figure in his life. So he would take that as oh my gosh, are you saying that I'm self-important? Or oh man.
If you recall, he goes and he visits him in his office at Harvard, or not in Harvard, wherever he was. And I never actually
Seattle.
understood how he got to his office. But
in the radio station?
In the show. No, how Fraser goes to Dr. Tewksbury's office.
Right. I don't know.
I forget the relationship and where that supposedly happened. Anyway, he goes to visit him. They hadn't seen each other in a long time. And he brings it up, like, that you wrote this letter. Why'd you phrase it this way? You must be very proud. Me. And of course, the professor starts putting Frasier through a traditional, like, therapy session.
Let's talk about
like,
why
do
that
you
would
think
key
I did?
on. Yeah.
And basically, the whole scene ends with him realizing that he feels alone. Because he was left at the altar, he got divorced from Lilith, his son lives in Boston, across the country. Yeah. And he keeps trying to chase something that he's always wanted and won't ever have, and feels alone. So anyway, it's like, those are just real emotions and real places to be within your head.
I feel like it's very hard to write somebody who's comedic, and to mix that with that sort of humanity would just be crazy. Yeah. Like, to try to get that out all at once. And that's why we remember Frasier, because, like, it worked. You know, those characters worked. That moment you're talking about works, because I feel like we're not an eminent professor of psychology or for his exact nature, but we have all been in that moment where we were like, did you mean what you said? Yeah. And maybe we're not brave enough to ask. We just kind of suck it down as, like, they just hate me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
But, like, in those moments, they resonate, I think, with me, because then I think, okay, why is that moment resonating with me? Do I feel alone and lonely? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, and then it jumps out of the screen and into your head, and then it becomes like a real
There's a mixture between overthinking and just being thoughtful.
Yeah.
One of the two. I struggle with that quite a bit. So.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love that writing. Oh, and that's something that I feel like is lacking today. It's like verbal juxtaposition that doesn't really happen, and emotional things that don't really happen. You get, like, for me, I really don't enjoy the show. Oh my gosh, with Sheldon, what's his name? Oh, Big Bang Theory.
Right.
I cannot enjoy that show for 2 seconds. There's something about it that just...
See, neither did I. And one, I didn't give it a fairly long shot to convince me. But, and this may be the same with you, one of the things that really hit me about it is that it was right in my wheelhouse of nostalgia, where I was like, I know that world. I've been in that world. I'm kind of nerdy. I understand all these references and things like that. And so it was like, I really don't want to revisit that right now. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's like, I don't know.
I always thought they were trying too hard.
Could be.
Where it was, and maybe it's not fair of me to say because of the nature of it being television in the audience that they're trying to get to, but playing it off as though you're super smart and super nerdy, but the references are super approachable. The more nerdy you are, the more in it you are, the more subtle and nuanced and just focused the things are that you know. Yeah. Meaning most people wouldn't understand the reference. But because it's television, I guess they had to somehow bring it to where you could actually be in on the joke with them. Yeah. So it was an actual kind of low-hanging fruit reference. So those two things happening at the same time didn't work for me. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a hard line to follow. Like you can be what you're talking about, like a Sheldon figure who is, and again, I'm going to butcher this, but he was like some sort of, what was he, a physicist of some sort? Where again, he understood the nuances of the universe, right? And so you really can't show that to someone without them just getting kind of wide-eyed, and not everybody, but somebody, me certainly, like wide-eyed, like, oh, okay, we're talking about particle theory or whatever that is. Whereas, us talking about, don't kill me, like, Firefly or Star Wars, and it's fascinating, it's interesting, it's nerdy, but the way I talk about it is I really want you to be interested in it. So I'm going to make it, depending on your
relatable
level,
and
I want it to be relatable because I want you to be just as excited about it as I am. So, and if you're already in that world, then we're going to start going down to the rabbit holes of like, is Mace Windu still alive? I don't know. We didn't really see him die. Yeah. And the Emperor was still alive, but he wasn't alive because he's a clone.
Yeah.
So there's, your audience, or you try to figure out your
Yeah.
audience. So I guess that's what they were trying to do, was make something that was unapproachable, approachable. And yeah, maybe that just didn't key for either one of us.
It didn't work for me. And plus, I don't know, maybe later seasons got a little bit, I think I watched like the first season and a half really trying.
Yeah. The guy had a Green Lantern shirt on. Going. It should have worked for me. Green Lantern. But it just didn't.
Yeah.
So.
But there's something to juxtaposition in all forms that I think make things either work or not work.
Okay.
Like something that's happy that happens right next to something super sad.
Yeah.
Not just emotionally, but, even just like color palettes or the balance of the environments that characters show up in. They're outside versus inside. And because if it's too much of the same over and over and over, you get used to it, and there's something that lacks interest for me. Okay. And it doesn't seem real either, because like we're going to walk outside to go to our cars, and then we're going to drive somewhere that's probably indoors.
Yeah.
So in our day-to-day environment, everything is always shifting and changing. And whenever we see something on TV that is counter to that, there's a lack of authenticity and realness.
Yeah.
And I think that's the disconnect for me.
You gotta, sometimes everybody talks about mindfulness, and I think you really, when you do take a moment, you just talked about kind of like going from here to there. If you do take a moment and be like, I'm just getting in, I'm going outside for a second. I'm in the world. I'm getting into my car. I'm sitting down. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to be someplace else. It's going to take some effort, but I'm going to be someplace else. And then I'm going to go into a house. That if you really pay attention to that conveyance, that moment in between, it's a wild trip. You're like, wait a second, I am a completely independent rolling ball in the universe, and I can drive here and drive there. And so there's something really special about it. And no, we do not pay attention to it. Nobody, well, somebody does, but we by and large do not. We show up at the next place, we're already morose. Like, why am I here? Oh, I have to make it to this appointment. I had no time to get coffee. So it's just taking that moment to understand the travel to get there, I think is super important. Man, now we're talking about the universe and getting back to us experience things.
Yeah, I mean,
the juxtaposition of light and dark. That's where we're gonna go. Okay.
I mean, the opposite is
bland, flat, lifeless, always happy, always sad.
Yeah, but there's also like I don't reject those things either.
Yeah, but
I mean, there's moments for that.
They're just not as interesting.
Why?
Well, it depends on your level of empathy, I think. But like being trapped in a cycle like that is it's very difficult to either, or rather to just experience. So if something's happy all the time, I think there's something within us that goes like, this isn't right. Like something's off here. Like this thing isn't that happy. This person isn't that happy all the time. For whatever reason that bothers us. There's that, where's it in animation, if something is too real but not quite, there's like the valley of uncanny valley or something like that.
I have no idea.
It's kind of like the discussions we're getting into with AI, when that person looks real, but they're not real. So something in our brain is really bothered by it. Right. Yeah. It makes you physically uncomfortable. So if somebody's just happy all the time, for whatever reason, we're just keyed on like, it's not quite. It's like being in a Star Trek episode. They have landed on Utopia, and you know that somebody is in a dungeon somewhere being like whipped apart to create this utopia. It's that kind of thing. And then the opposite's true. Like, just why is this person sad or morose or angry all the time? There's got to be a reason for this. And
I mean, is somebody... now we're calling into like, what is the
let's do it.
What is the epitome of human existence that we're all chasing? You go on social and you get the Jay Shettys and Tony Robbins of the world, and all these people that are Mel Robbins and others that are pumping all this
well, that's hard too,
mindfulness,
ultra and positive. Sometimes that's
a lot of it's positive. I don't know if it's necessarily a toxic positivity
thing,
I
wouldn't go there either. But
a lot of it's awareness. A lot of it is being mindful of what's going on, and then talking about the choices that you have behind that. And anyway, it's like when you talk about somebody that's always happy, I mean, on the surface, that sounds great. Why in the world wouldn't you want to just always be in a positive, happy place? You know, is that not what we would want to achieve? But then you come to the, but if you're always happy, do you ever actually feel happy because you don't have something to judge it against?
To compare to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even for, what I do to either enjoy what's in front of me or stay inspired by the things I'm trying to create, that contrast is part of me as a human being. It's, I need to read something sad. I need to experience something sad to feel depth and to either want to represent it. I'd rarely represent something that's like dark. Maybe when I was in high school, I was like, oh, the existence. Mm-hmm. But without that reference point, how do you know what's exciting and fun and light? So yeah, that's always been important for me, at least in my work, to do something like that. No, I get that.
I just had a really weird thought that goes with this, a religious one.
Okay.
So that calls into the heaven versus hell sort of,
Sure.
afterlife thing,
Okay.
If we talk about, various religions think about afterlife and going to something, if you want to call it heaven or something else, but a place
Sure.
that's like just utopia forever after. Does it feel like in what we're talking about, like if you eliminate the darkness, if you will, would you appreciate that in that environment?
I think part of that conversation is how aware you are of the situation. Like, is it a dream state where I don't really care? Like you rarely enter, I wouldn't say enter into a dream. You're rarely in the middle of a dream and go, I'm in a dream right now. It's funny. I just watched a terrible 1980s movie called Dreamscape, where Dennis Quaid is like a psychic and can hop into people's dreams. So this is bizarre that we're having this conversation. It's really bad. It's really bad. He stops a guy from killing the president in his dream, and then to make sure he doesn't have any sort of like problems later on, he then kills the bad guy in a dream. It's bizarre. We're getting off topic. But being aware of that, right? In the middle of the dream, you don't suddenly go like, I'm in a dream. I'm going to make an airplane around me and fly off.
Yeah.
So are you aware that you've passed and you are in the utopia, either if you're creating or what is in the back of your head is created? Or are you fully aware and then again, have that moment of like, but where's the grain?
Yeah.
Where's the pixelation of this image that I know it's real, right? Can I touch this plant? It's a beautiful plant, but can I make sure I can touch it? It would depend on that for me anyway. And maybe I'm overthinking utopia.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if AI and the metaverse are environments that we can create ourselves, we should be able to create a sort of utopia then, right? Yeah.
Getting into the matrix.
So I'd be curious if there was a place that in a world like that where you're living virtually and you can experience nothing but positive, good things, would we actually enjoy it? Or would we be like, you know what? We need to actually write something negative in here.
Why do we go there? You know what I mean? Like,
what do you mean?
One of my favorite films is Ready Player One. Favorite books and films. Do we go there because we're escaping, right? We're escaping kind of a not so great reality, and then we're entering the thing we've always wanted and having fun with it. I think that's what makes it enjoyable. And so to sit there, are we like, you talk about AI, I mentioned the Matrix. Are we born into it so we don't know any different?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're a little baby and you get your Apple headset has been slid on, and then that's you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Or what is it, the Disney reference? Wall-E.
Oh, yeah.
Being like, not knowing any different. You're just on a cruise ship of love through the universe. Well, you've destroyed the Earth.
If you have nothing to compare it to, then
then what's enjoyable about this? It's like, being born into prosperity or something like that. First, it's not your fault. I don't blame anybody that's born into prosperity. But if you only have that, what have you experienced in your life? It's like, I always appreciate when you look at these large companies, and this is a longer discussion, but somebody is born into that family, right? Mm-hmm. And they don't allow and I don't want to say an heir or something, but they don't allow their son or daughter to step right into it. You're like, please go experience the world and then come back and decide if you want this. I think that is a really good way to confront that reality. And so, to your point, what I was talking about, if you're born into that prosperity, if you don't know any different, then is it really that enjoyable? We have this silly idea of, or at least my age group, of Paris Hilton just being like, oh, this is great. I don't care because I have this and that and the other thing. But we forget that she's a human being, so she has experience with things too. But you have the cartoon of Paris Hilton in your head, and you go like, man, I really wish this person experienced reality because maybe they'd appreciate what they have a little bit more.
I feel like the Kardashians actually are a good example of what you're describing.
That's a hard one.
Because the aspirational quality of the show and the experiences that they have. I mean, in one scene you have Kim trying on Marilyn Monroe's, famous dress,
right?
And in other scenes you have her going to a doctor for like skin issues, like disease and things of that nature. Or then you get was it Courtney that had issues? Courtney and Travis having issues like getting pregnant, and so you get like real stuff. Real men and women actually go through these issues, So it's not just, what'd you say?
I watched her master class.
Did you?
The mother's master class. Oh yeah, take information from wherever you can.
Kris Jenner.
Yeah, but
what was it on?
What's that?
What was the master class? What was the topic?
It was a branding yourself, I think.
Okay.
Or stepping into the reality of your choosing and how
Is
to
it worth it?
Make it. I mean, there's stuff you take from it. It was funny. It was right after I did Martha Stewart's, who I love her to death just because she's got an edge. Isn't that goofy?
Yeah.
You actually get.
Well, she's been to prison, so.
Well, I don't know if that's the edge, but like you certainly get. If you didn't know anything about her and you took that class, you would see the edge. There's this enormously successful person with a million different branches of her life, but you can also tell if you directly work for her, you are going to be on it or you're going to be gone.
There is a certain level of directness to her delivery and how she talks. And
I don't know. I wish I had that mindset on occasion, but I'm too much of a people pleaser to stay in that reality all the time. Yeah, I couldn't.
But being able to morph in and out whenever necessary is probably the place to be,
Yeah, I'm just speaking from my own experience. It's hard to shift in and out of that when you're built in a very particular way.
Yeah. Why do you think it's being like a jerk if you're direct?
Yeah, and I know there's cognitive dissonance here. There's a reason I go to therapy. It's this. It's all or nothing. Either I'm allowed to take up this space or I'm not. And so it depends on what role you're playing in that moment. If you're in a management role, then you have to lean in a little bit and say, hey, I really need this thing to be accomplished. Your work reflects on me. I'm going to hopefully support what you're doing. We're going to work together to get this done. And so that's about as direct as I can get out of that. The Martha Stewarts of the world are like my way or the highway. And they can do that. I mean, they have the mastery to back that up, or at least that's what we say to ourselves in our heads. I just don't think I possess that.
Something subtle that I think, a nuance there that I think actually is more than a nuance, but something that we don't pay attention to, is when you get to a certain I'm trying to qualify this in a certain way. If you're Martha Stewart with all the notoriety, the resource availability that she has around her, she can have a mindset of, this is going to sound cold, but like of individuals serving a purpose. And if they're here to serve in that role, then I need to just go find somebody else that can.
I hate that. I understand that's a reality, but I hate that. I've had managers say that to me too. Like that phrase of like, listen, if you cannot do what I need in this moment, this was never directly said to me, but if you cannot do what's needed in this moment, I'm going to hire somebody tomorrow that can.
Yeah.
And you may be skillful at what you're doing, but also replaceable. And I just hate that mindset. There's a reality to it, but I don't think that's how you need to do things. I don't. And I may be wrong, and I may not be a person to, be in that management role as successfully as that person was, but just I won't do it.
It is interesting. I mean, I would think that the more that's on the line, like the reputation or the money or the something of the brand, a brand being a person, the brand being a company or something else, the more that's on the line for that thing, the more likely, or maybe, dare I say the word acceptable to me personally, it could be, or at least where I could understand treating a person a little bit more like a resource or a tool. And I'm not saying I necessarily would.
Sure.
I'm saying I think I could understand where it comes from.
I hear you.
Where it's like, if this machine is really going to survive, like what's going on, we got to plug in the right things. And if that, and the opposite is also there, where it's like, this is a person.
Yeah.
They're not a wrench that you put down and pick up whenever you need it. And it's just like, that's its only job is to do that. Like, this is a person with dreams and goals and kids or, whatever it is. And you can't treat them the same.
I think that there's been this, as far as I've known it, and it's a stereotype now, the pizza party, what have you, that we're all a family here. We're all a family here, and until you cross me, and then Uncle whatever, you're gone. And I like the change that's happening. If it's a change, maybe it's just a couple people here and there that's happening, that we're maybe more so like a professional team versus a family. And it's the nuance there is nice. I'm going to keep using therapy references. Nice versus kind, right? So nice is the people person that you really want to be. Oh, okay. Don't worry that you didn't get that done. I'll help you out with that. I'll take care of it this time forever. Whereas kind is setting that boundary, and so.
I don't want to skip past that.
No,
so
you're fine.
I didn't quite understand. Nice versus kind. Go through that again for me.
Nice is the pushover. Kind is saying, I really want to do that, but I don't have time for that right now. I'm sorry. Let's try to do that later on. It's setting that boundary, not burning yourself out, not overworking yourself. And there's other examples that aren't business examples, but what my therapist always brought up to me is that nice is telling somebody you're okay with something when you're really not. It makes you uncomfortable. It goes against who you are as a person, but you don't want to rock the boat, so you're doing it anyway. Whereas kind is setting that boundary and saying, that really doesn't align with who I am. There's probably a better way to say that too. But, saying like, hey, that makes me really uncomfortable. I really can't do that for you. Maybe I can find you somebody who can, maybe we can do this in a different way. But that's just not something I'm comfortable with. And that is a incredibly difficult thing for me to say to someone. So this is a thing I'm learning. Nice versus kind is what I'm learning right now.
Does it feel a little selfish to put up a boundary?
Oh yeah, shoot. I mean, we go back to time and again with me, taking up space is something I'm learning, or the deservedness to take up space is something I'm learning. And so to know that I can be kind to someone and still be worth their time after that is a difficult thing for me. You know what I mean? Like you come up against somebody and you say, I really can't help you with that right now. Feels like death to me. Because there's a portion of that, it's like, I'm just going to stab you in the face.
Is it like you're letting them down?
Yeah. Like, again, like I'm going to stab you in the face. But really I'm saying like, I can't help you move your couch today. You know what I mean? Like it's that jump for me. And so I'm learning. Yeah. I'm learning the way of the world with that.
I think this is along the same lines where, like, what is the value of friendship or any relationship, whether it's friendship, a significant other, with a kid, with a dog, like whatever it is. at the end of the day, there's got to be some sort of value exchange. I think that's really what those connections are about. You know, with a friend in particular, maybe I think the value in a lot of ways is the emotional exchange. Something good happens, you hop on the phone, you want to exchange that with them and tell them.
1,000%.
The exchange is something happens to them, they hop on the phone with you. And so the two of you are each other's therapists almost, and cheerleaders and whatever. So you're not just alone.
It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
What is it?
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Let me write this down.
Oh yeah, it's a triangle with a large base and a little.
I figured I'm not making anything new, but it's just like these things are coming.
Well, no, I mean, but to make sense to me. It's an absolute true thing. You know, at the bottom. I'm going to butcher this. This is actual science. The bottom of that is like, well, the top of it is self-realization, right? You are a human being. I'm meant to take up space in this world. I know what I'm supposed to do, all that stuff. You cannot get there without the first is food and shelter, go your basics stuff and like that.
If your body's dead,
you
can't do anything else.
Fair enough.
Usually.
And then you work your way up through love and appreciation and acceptance and financial well-being, all those building blocks that help you, because you can't, like you said, your body's not there, you're not anything. If you don't have a community and you're not accepted in that community, then you can't make it to, a little bit higher. We need the people around us to bring us up. And so that exchange you're talking about with friendship, it's easier for me to take that as I need that love and support to move further or to be successful as a person, more than, hey, you're really good at photography, or or shooting video content. I really need you to do that for me. Those two conversations are very like, there's a way to say that. There's a place to say that, like, hey man, I did this work. I'd like to do some work for you. Can you show me this, thing you're really good at? That conversation is different, right?
But
it's still okay.
Yeah, but it's an evolution of value, I feel like, between people.
But I have a hard time.
Because at first it's a business transaction, right?
Well, see, it depends on where it is, Like,
well, yeah, I mean,
if I'm coming into your office,
context,
it's a business. I'm coming in for your mastery of something. But if I met you on the street and I discover you're really good at this, I think, and that's by and large what I am. I'm the guy that, like, I will meet somebody in a coffee shop and then discover, like, oh man, you're really good at this. Let's talk about that.
Well, and I guess the evolution is, in a lot of ways, you can engage another person because the professional aspect of what you bring and what they bring to the table, right?
Yeah.
But then the more the more time that you spend with those people, the more the human components come out, and you start talking more than just the professional technical stuff that's going on here and whatever that is. And you start talking about your day and your kids and vacation and life and the weather and illness and all those kind of things come out, and that transitions from the value being, okay, you did photos for me or you fixed my car, to this emotional connection and that being
I like you for who you
evolution.
are.
Yeah.
This crazy mixture of information and physical being and all that. I really enjoy being around you, and I appreciate you for that. It's, taking you as a whole, that's a form of love in itself that needs to be practiced more, I think. But yes, I agree.
Well, and people that can't get past transactional kind of components, they lack the emotional part, are probably maybe subconsciously or consciously avoiding the idea of, like, I don't know how to say what I want to say.
Social graces, the ability to read the room instead of saying, like, hey, you do this thing good, do it for me.
Yeah.
To being excited about that person's talent and wanting to work with them. Maybe.
I think I don't know how to really say what I'm, like, it's in here, but I can't get the words
Dang it,
wrapped around
Brandon,
it.
you're the interviewer.
I know,
you're
man.
supposed to have mastery
I know,
of
I'm
this
supposed
thing.
to.
Where are your notes?
That's why we're here. We're
Call out
learning.
your notes. And
Yeah, all those
we'll go
notes
over
that
it.
I prepare for these things, you know.
Absolutely. I spent the entire evening looking into a mirror and what's the Saturday Night Live? No, Saturday Night Live. I forget that moment. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And gosh darn it, people like me. You just say that over and over. You never seen that sketch?
It sounds familiar. Who is
Oh,
it?
it's wonderful. I forget who it is.
I'm trying to recall.
I forget who it is, but they play a therapist of some sort, and they have various people on. And my favorite one is, of course, Michael Jordan, who can't keep a straight face. Because
I've never seen a Michael Jordan episode.
They go really
so
tight
I've
in
never
on
seen it,
Michael
then, I guess.
Jordan
Okay.
looking into a mirror, and he just can't keep a straight face. And he's saying, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me. And to hear, it's good. He should say that.
Yeah.
But like to see Michael Jordan doing it, it's like, whew, I hope he already knows that.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful moment.
Well, with the pressure on his shoulders, I'm sure.
Yeah. But it's to use a more modern reference, like Ted Lasso, Hannah Waddington's character, before she does anything of importance or something that makes her nervous, she goes and gets into front of a mirror and gets really big and like, I can take care of this. And she's showing her like inner self that she can do it, and then moves on. Same sort of thing.
How do you feel about like positive affirmations and that whole concept of looking in a mirror? And...
I think there's reality to it. I think that it's good to speak something into existence. It's still hokey's the wrong word, because I'm a skeptic at heart. No, I'm not. I'm a romantic at heart. I will say.
See, I feel the same, but I know why.
Really? Okay. What's your reasoning?
So feeling hokey or, oh, this is cheesy.
Hokey's the wrong word. Maybe cheesy. Maybe cheesy.
Lame. Like any synonym of these, I think works. And it's not that positive affirmations actually are. That's my perception because of where I come from with it, which is you've spent enough time saying the opposite apparently to yourself that when you say the positive version of that, it feels weird and wrong, and it's like, and it feels forced. Oh yeah. Like I'm very much the kind of person that I don't like forced things. Right. I like things to happen organically.
But it's the perception of forced.
Yeah.
Remember?
But I understand that you don't change the narrative that's in your head without saying something that's different. Yeah. You got to say something different.
You have to break it up.
And what I think is really fascinating is I don't consciously ever think something negative about myself. I couldn't tell you the last time I had something go through my head that's like, oh, you're an idiot. I've never consciously ever thought that stuff, which I'm grateful for.
If you stepped into my office for a moment, that would be, that's all you would hear. I'm better. Yeah. But man, I am very good at saying, feel like man, you are not good enough for this right now. You need to.
Like you actively think that at times?
I am healthy enough now that I recognize it's happening, and I'm getting better at saying like easy. I'm not good at the opposite. I'm not good at going like, listen, man, go back to that phrase. You're good enough. You're smart enough. And I'm not there yet, but it used to be a very toxic situation. Cause we'll go back to me holding space. Like I didn't think I was worthy of that. And so you discover that you are skilled at something. You discover that you have, a talent that you can bring to the table, and that coinciding with, I'm not good enough as a human being, you're not going to, you're lost in that stuff.
Yeah.
So I am.
How are you going to feel good as an artist if you don't feel good as a person? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Start
and
there.
The torture artist thing it may be true for some folks. I worked at a gallery where one of the artists that we represented, for some reason, couldn't work unless he was in a deep depression, which I think is awful. Like, I feel for that guy.
You feel most at home in deep depression.
Yeah, I felt for that
wild.
guy. Like, he didn't produce but a few things a year because he had to be in that headspace. And so, like, when stuff would come in from him, you just feel awful. You'd be like, man,
because he knew where it came from.
Yeah, exactly. So, so that's an example of that being true. I certainly don't want to exist there. I think it's hard to break out of it. When you're creating, and there's a gamut of this, from graphic design to fine art, depending on what your intent is, if you're trapped trying to present emotions from a thing, then you're stuck. You are going to represent happiness, but you're also going to represent, fury and depression and the other things that are going to be in there, and you're going to want to experience those things as you're putting them out there, because otherwise it's not honest.
Yeah.
Whew. Yeah, it's.
I feel like I just had another random thought go through my head, which is the evolution. This is going to sound maybe too goofy, but I feel like there might be something that we can read into in the evolution of music in the modern culture,
doctor.
In the modern, not even modern world. You go back from the Renaissance to today. Renaissance was what? 14. Oh, now I'm going to blank on
thereabouts.
Oh, thereabouts. No. 450 to 1500, 1600, so. Somewhere in there. Is that right?
I don't know. We're going to both look like morons.
I'm remembering
here.
my classical musical period, 1600 to 17.
It was in the past
20.
Somewhere.
Baroque.
The Renaissance was a mental state.
Yeah, I think that's
the rebirth.
Now I'm going to blank. Yeah.
Just say that.
It's so bad.
It was
now.
the rebirth.
Yeah.
The Enlightenment, if you will. Not the Enlightenment, but one of them.
Yeah. Well, what I'm getting at,
sure.
Which is terrible that I can't remember. I'd have to reverse the dates. But anyway,
yes.
Renaissance music. It's a ton of singing.
I did not purport myself to be scholarly. I just want that out there. But.
And it's instrumental music that's coming out at this time. Yeah. So you have a lot of almost thinking like you're at a bar. If you think of, let's go back to Cheers and they're at Cheers and they're singing songs or something, right? Yeah. It's that, but the year is 1432.
Sure.
And they're playing guitars and they're singing like pub music, quite literally the exact same environment as Cheers just a long, long time ago.
Heck yeah.
And
we're talking about,
and we think that we've evolved, and
lutes.
We really have not.
Is there a lute being played of some sort?
Zithers and things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
All the things. Mandolins.
Yes. Bards.
But yeah.
Bards doing their bardish things.
Yeah. But you think of this music, it's very much about one thing, typically. The aesthetic, the sound, the words, and the story are about a particular moment. If you want to think of opera, which is where a lot of this comes from, it's like an aria. A recitative moves the story along.
Okay. An
aria is about a particular moment. I'm sad, and I'm going to sing for 5 minutes about why I'm sad. Mm-hmm. It's what the Renaissance kind of was like you had a breakup, you had a breakup song, and it sounds like a breakup song. If you're singing about being happy in the meadow, it's going to sound like you're happy in a meadow.
So what you're
they're
saying
very just siloed in one emotion the entire thing.
So modern classical is Taylor Swift. Is what you're saying?
No.
I'm pretty sure that's what
classical
you're saying
music
right
is also kind of the same, but you get the Sturm und Drang thing with Beethoven and others where you get happy and sad next to each other now.
Sure.
So we went from very much the same emotion for the entire piece to then classical music where you get Sturm und Drang, storm and whatever next to each other of happy versus sad. But it's very still a big moment of sadness next to a long moment of happiness. But there's still a back and forth. Now we have juxtaposition, right? Mm-hmm. Then you get into romantic music, which is all over the place. And it's
a tempest, right?
It's more like today in being a human being where you're happy and then you get a phone call that makes you mad and then you hang up and now you're petting a puppy and then you're eating dinner and all these different emotions that you actually feel as a person.
Okay.
And our music still very much is, it's weird because now it's all mixed in pop music and popular music, I should say. Kind of feels like going back to the Renaissance where the song is about one thing and that's it. I find that to be interesting. So what I'm saying is
the brevity of it.
What's that?
We're not creating Alice's Diner anymore? Who's
I don't know.
Fudge.
You can say whatever you want. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, Allison's Diner. I'm going to forget the darn name. It's not Woody Guthrie or no, I think it's Guthrie, the son Guthrie. But he created there's an album that's like one big song called Alice's Restaurant, and I think it's about this day. And I'm going to butcher this, but it's a really long song. If you had that all the time, then yeah, you could seep through emotion. But yeah, I think that's the album versus the song, right? You want to tell a story that's the album?
An album is a collection of moments, right?
So,
but they're not like interwoven. But what I'm getting, I guess it could be. One track to the next track.
Okay, I'm fascinated about what you're saying.
I'm trying to figure out what in the world I'm trying to get at too.
Dude, I defer
because I had to explain my mindset first.
I'm always fascinated when you get into music. I love it, right? Face value. And I always say his name right. Haydn. I listen to him constantly when I'm working. Right, just love him to death.
Why?
I don't know. Something you just find somebody or something that really keys on, or it just stirs something inside of you, and you just get stuck with it. I do that with him. I do that with Blink-182.
Joseph Haydn right next to Blink-182.
Oh, dude, it's all over the place. Miles Davis. I will hop around everywhere, dude.
Yeah. Me too.
Nicki Minaj.
That's funny.
I will go there.
WAP next to Bitches Blue.
Dude.
Brew next to
I'm telling you,
Symphony
for
104.
whatever reason, when something keys in you, it's there. And I will play it over and over. I'm going to forget which song, but there is a Weezer song, Say It Ain't So. Say It Ain't So was on repeat for probably 4 years while I painted.
Is it the words? Is it the sound?
Right, but what's fascinating about this is I have recently come back to that song. Right, I'm doing this whole musical nostalgia thing where I revisit. That's why I'm talking about Blink-182 all the time. Like that musical, it brings me back to this moment that I feel good. I am revisiting some of the Weezer. And either discovering it was really pedantic or discovering that wow, there's a broader thing here we're discussing. Now, Weezer is nerd rock, so it's not supposed to be deep. Whereas what Green Day is pretty, they try to be pretty insightful. So yeah, coming back to that, taking meaning from it and all that's where I'm stuck and trying to get,
See, I've never, I guess just because the environment that music has always kind of played for me in wordless music. I've never paid attention really to words. Even in popular music, I hear the words as another instrument.
Yeah.
Because I hear the articulation and the way that consonants and vowels kind of play together and all of that. It sounds like this is going to sound goofy, but it sounds like an instrument more than it sounds like words to me.
1,000%
and how they interplay with the actual instruments as well. So I never pay attention to word content.
The two songs that'll hit you over the head is oh gosh, is it Foreigner? That they're talking about, he's on a vacation far away. That song. Okay, so there are certain lines that for your entire life you think they are one thing. What's that?
Was that Foreigner?
I have no clue.
It doesn't really matter, but I know the song. Okay.
There are just certain things that just, what you're talking about, that voice is there and you enjoy the song, but maybe you didn't grab the lyric, which is from a different time. I think when we had the vinyl, certainly my father's generation, you were fascinated by reading the back of that thing and discovering what they were saying. Whereas what we're talking about, and I think I really key off of what you're saying, that voice was an instrument, it was part of the thing. So Blink-182, this is part of growing up, is one of the lines, and I always thought it was completely different. I think the song is called "This Is Part of Growing Up." This is part of growing up. It became so melded together that I never knew that's what it was saying.
Yeah,
and certainly, Weezer has a bunch of moments like that. Bare Naked Ladies is a great example of that. That whole one day where it's just blows you together with this I'm not going to the term chorus of stuff that they're saying as fast as they can.
Yeah,
it becomes this wonderful thing to hear, even though you maybe are not paying attention.
Well, it's like listening to half of Busta Rhymes discography or Eminem. It's these are. Yeah, you're not really the words. Whenever you break it down, you're you laugh at it because mom's spaghetti. What are we talking about?
Well, I'll contest that with a bit of Mac Miller. Come back to Mac Miller and be like, wow. this thing that musically resonated within me. I'm going back and reading and discovering, man, this is resonating with me again. Like the things he's talking about, just his self-doubt, his own journey, and certainly not the entire experience, but the pieces that I can take from that resonate so much within me. That was a discovery in itself. So sometimes you find the crossover.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I brought up Eminem. I think this conversation is funny.
More about Eminem than I do.
No, probably not. But
I like
he's got a song called "Stan" that came out probably 20-some years ago now.
Yeah. Great story. Just aside about Eminem and that album, I believe, is there was a Virgin Megastore in Burbank, the town where I grew up, that had, it was back where you could go up to the booths and put on headphones to like test out the album if you were. So we were in there. My dad and I like to go there after going to In-N-Out. It's very Californian. We'd go in there, get In-N-Out. We'd go in there and like I'd be looking through the toys and stuff. When that album came out, all my friends were jacked about it. Like it was the greatest thing ever. And I liked him. He was on the radio. I convinced my father to buy me that album by describing it to him as honestly as I could as a cultural moment. Like, you don't understand, Dad. Yeah. Like, this is creating.
Don't listen to the words,
something.
The cussing, and
don't listen too close. But the overarching meaning is society. Like, I went after it, and he bought it for me. He's a wonderful moment in our father-son relationship. But yeah, I remember the texture of that store, and then having the album and being like, I am the coolest dude on the planet. So yes, so Stan. We were talking about Stan.
So Stan is like a real. I think it's like a 6-minute song, and it's from the viewpoint of a fan that's writing letters to Eminem that just go unanswered for a long time.
It becomes
very dark, and at the end there's a intentional car accident. Let's put it that way.
Gotcha.
And so very dark. But there's some like actual realness to that story. Yeah. Flip side. There's a song called Gorilla that he has. And towards the very end, he just starts going off, and it sounds like Busta Rhymes. And I don't know what you were saying to me right now. But it's for me, it's one of the, I've never looked at the lyrics, and I couldn't care less. Because, again, it's one of those, like, the words don't serve an interest to me more as much as, or maybe they would if I were to look, I don't know.
Ripple of sound.
Yeah. It's straight 16th notes the whole time. But the nuances, the way that the words come off and where they're placed changes the accent pattern and when they happen. So again, it's more of a percussive drum part than it is a lyrical part.
See, it's funny. It's like we overlook this. You can recognize it from where your brain's at. And then I just see it as like, man, that sounds amazing. I feel that coming through.
But parts of it sound like nonsense words because he's talking about like a toilet seat shows up in there, and I'm like, what? How did we get a toilet?
You said that song is called Gorilla. So we go to the Gorillas.
Yeah,
they have quite a few songs that I'm like, man, this sounds amazing. I have no idea what's going on, but this is so cool. A Fatboy Slim. Let's go there, man. That's like, because he's like just a DJ.
Do we even know what he's saying?
Fatboy
Slim, the funk, so whatever. What is that word?
To your point, he is a very and I don't know, I'm outside of this. He is taking clips of things as a DJ and creating a percussive moment or whatever you're talking about of sound. So the nonsense, maybe it's happenstance that it works out and it has a fun, funk so brother. Like, but what is what?
Yeah,
it sounds amazing, and you want to say it a bunch. Yeah, but like, what am I saying? Stuff like that. That's a wonderful moment of like happenstance that creating a emotional feeling, but you have no idea what the heck is going on.
Yeah,
for me, I don't know music.
Music is, but we all know music.
We know music, but well, that's a good question for you. Do you feel like because of the knowledge you have of the structure of the music, does it take away from the music? Like how the sausage is made. Mm-hmm. So is music like a complex orchestration? Is it lesser because you can see under the hood?
No, I think it's deeper appreciation because you understand how it happened.
Very cool.
And you understand where the technical, as somebody that has spent I would stand in a room for 12 straight hours, no joke, without stopping. No bathroom, like not walking away from the instrument. Stand there for 12 hours and be so just like lost in practice.
The good thing, right? The flow.
Yeah.
The flow you get into.
Like there's no distractions. Like this is where you're supposed to be.
To eat.
No
You've
problems.
got everything. The energy of the universe is feeding you.
I have not lived that again since my. I've not been able to tap that since my undergrad.
You gotta
and
find
that was
that,
in
man.
like. I graduated in 2009 for my undergrad, so that tells you how long that's
that
been.
again.
So, but what I'm getting at though is like understanding from that kind of vantage point, being in the room as being the person that's. You understand what you're trying to achieve. You understand the skills that are necessary to do it. You understand the skills you have and the delta in between and the work you got to do to be able to get that. That is really tough.
So there's an appreciation of the mechanics of the artistry of putting it together.
So like when, like, I think that to me is probably what classical musicians are frustrated the most about, is that the art is dying for what it is.
Right.
The appreciation for that is going away. And to stand out even more, you have to be even better. So you have to be really in the practice room, even more than that.
I mean, but we talked about this a little bit, though.
The general population doesn't appreciate when they see somebody like Itzhak Perlman. Like, you never see Itzhak Perlman on TV anymore.
Right.
But if you did, and you understood like what it takes for him to produce the sounds that he's making is like ridiculous.
Well, you mentioned Bernstein yesterday, and there's that giant film about him. So maybe there's bits and pieces coming back into things. But we talked about this yesterday, that you say classical is dying in such and such a way, and you are in that world, so you know. And one thing we brought up that I thought was interesting, that like you spoon feed it back to the universe by like the Indiana Jones soundtrack, and the thing that makes you cry during a film is the experience, the actors, the moment, but also like, oh my gosh, there's like this swirling thing that's creating this, like the silent film. You could take a lot of dialogue out of movies like that and just be like, oh my gosh. Ray's theme. I'm not a huge fan of the later Star Wars films, and that is another discussion. But Ray's theme from, it's John Williams back and forth again. But Ray's theme, out of all these wonderful things he's put together for the Star Wars films, Ray's theme is like really moving to me, like that moment. That's another song I could listen to over and over and over. And it gives you that kind of emotional journey of this apprehensive hero. You can hear that in the song. Yeah.
Well, there's a reason that he's the most decorated film composer and one of the most, prolific that have ever been on this earth.
That doesn't provide this like, reassurance for you that like, okay, classical's there somewhere.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking about this while you were talking. I was like, if we were to take the movie Pride and Prejudice, I've never seen a movie with Keira Knightley, and whenever this came out, like maybe 10 years, I don't know. Some time ago now.
There's a couple.
But
which is a big question, which Mr. Darcy that you really enjoy the most?
Never saw it, so I don't know.
Bro.
Yeah, no.
There's two. Well, there's two. Colin Firth is one of them, and I'm going to forget his name, but Colin Firth's wonderful. The guy beforehand with the hand, people will know this when I say this, the hand moment.
I'm going to say,
like,
I have no idea.
Oh, it's one of those. Like, you know he wants to emote. Right, and he has to walk away from her. Anyway, it's like it's a whole thing. But you're saying the music in those movies is even more so?
So I have a playlist called like Amazing Soundtrack, or I don't have it. It's on Spotify. But I always start at the top of that one because the top like 30 are, I would agree, in no particular order, are
Bangers.
Really freaking strong. Yeah. And one of them is Your Hands Are Cold is the title of the track from the movie.
I wonder if we're talking about the same moment.
Maybe.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe
that's a dance moment. Anyway.
But
go.
2 minutes and 23 seconds into this thing is like, I've never heard something like that happen in film music. It sounds like you're listening to Rimsky-Korsakov or somebody like that from the Romantic in
Which you
late
would,
1800s,
you're
early
saying
1900s.
that's a very romantic moment or very sad moment.
It's like stupid, over the top, dripping with emotion kind of moment, which you don't really get. Like
throat.
Yeah, because technically, on paper, that's a very complicated moment because you have the strings that are doing this certain like descending, very heavy. Like when you hear it, it feels like two characters talking at once. Because there's this piano thing that's going on, which, piano is a percussion instrument. So there's no real changing the articulation. It's very pointed,
So is that...
You could change the length of it, but you can't change the pointedness of that. But the strings on the opposite side,
the piano,
again, juxtaposition comes.
And the strings are the people talking within the room?
No. I don't... It just feels like two...
I'm making stuff up.
Again, it's two characters at once. You have this heavy weightedness of the strings that are happening in a descending sort of fashion.
Okay.
You got the piano that's sort of doing a little dance by itself, but it's a lot more staccato-ish in the articulation of it.
Okay.
So you have these two very different things happening at the same time. The string part is so heavy in the way that they're performing it that every single note that they play feels late. It's not actually late. It's just super on the backside of the beat.
Does it make you uncomfortable?
So a little bit.
Puts you on
and that's
edge,
why it feels
maybe?
like, yeah. But it works so well together. And so technically in the way that you perform that is very difficult because you have to be super locked in to pull it off in a convincing way.
In this moment, I'm almost off beat.
Yeah, but the music won't tell you that. When you look at the sheet music, it doesn't tell you to do that.
But you need to be over
That's
here.
a interpretation that you have to do.
Oh, man.
Which is crazy.
That's like...
And that's what a lot of people don't know is like most of what you hear, especially in, again, classical music where you're reading, so much of popular music is like by rote and there's no actual sheet music involved.
Fair.
So it's hard to actually... There's interpretation, but you're not interpreting somebody else's recipe, on paper. But when you walk in for a film reading and you're playing violin or something, you're reading sheet music. And a lot of times it'll have some notes in there, but you have to still interpret what that means. There's a trillion musical terms out there, but you still have to understand what does staccato mean in this moment.
So you're reading
staccato just means separated.
You're reading someone's poetry
separated.
in your voice and making the beats in your voice and the pauses in your mind.
Which is a very...
Golly.
Yeah. And you're doing it in real time, by the way. Like when they record these film sessions, part of the reason you get so much popular sound, popular music in film now is because it's so expensive to have an orchestra. Everybody's union in LA. You got 8-hour recording day, which is going to be X number of dollars per person. You go over, oh my gosh, overtime is crazy. And you got to feed people. There's mandatory break. Like everything is regimented. And you have to have a lot of people because it's a lot of different instruments.
I need that as a graphic
So they don't
designer.
want to pay for that anymore.
I need to be paid. Paid is great, but I need to be fed throughout the day as a graphic designer. I think that's need to be built in. I wish we had writers. That could be my writer. If you hire me, you have to buy me lunch.
Exactly. Just Jimmy John's. Nothing complicated. But even the other part that's not even musical is stagehands have their own union. And all of these people, you can't set any equipment up by yourself in a film studio.
Isn't that goofy?
You have to wait for somebody else to move the chair. They have to move the microphone.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I could just do this. Don't touch that. I will do that. So all of that is time. It's all money. And money is the thing that's changing the music that we hear in our films because it just becomes so damn expensive. And so a lot of it, and because technology is catching up too, Hans Zimmer is famous for having his own studio where he's recorded every single sound every instrument can make. And he synthesized it. He actually layers that in with actual orchestra now. So if you listen to Batman Begins and all that, half of that's synthetic in a computer. They're real instrument samples, but it was done in a computer.
I can see that. The more you say that, and the more I think of those tones, that makes sense. What's a? I guess I would.
We were like all over. There's no through line, but I love it.
What's shoot, the first electronic soundtrack is man. The dun 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 dun, like the
what do you mean?
Shoot, it's the first electronic synthesized soundtrack is in a movie, and I believe it's about the Olympics.
Bum 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 bum.
That one. Yes.
I cannot think of the name of it.
But when you say that,
exactly
and when you kind of talked about the feel of Hans Zimmer, like boom, like I went right there. It's like, oh.
You know, when you sing that, by the way, my reference for whatever reason is Chevy Chase in Vacation.
Is it Vacation or is it Fletch?
When he's running to Wally World and then they find out that it's close. Like
there you go. Well, that's because that song is ubiquitous with a slow motion run towards something.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
Of all the films that have used that's the one.
Man. Well, I mean, electronic. We all have those like moments stuck in my head. I can't do chores without humming the Pirates of the Caribbean theme. It's just funny. It's in there.
Well, when you talk about samples, the first sample was Stevie Wonder. What was the song?
Like the first sample of a thing used in something.
The first sample machine. Like the ability, Did you ever watch Cosby Show? Yeah. It's when he was on the Cosby Show. They were in the family got invited. I forget what the whole thing was. Is it a car accident? I forget. It's been years since I saw it. But the wife and daughter, I can't remember character names, were invited to the recording studio with Stevie, and he was in there. And they went through that process. They used basically a live looping situation. So you have a microphone that runs through a looper.
Right.
Which basically is like, you remember a yak back in the day? You press record and then you could press it and it would repeat what you just said. It's that.
Charlie Puth does live in concert.
Yeah, exactly. Right? It's the exact same thing. Puth. Yeah. But you have a microphone that's picking up them in the studio talking or saying something, and then it just loops it over and over.
Bring it over here.
It's got a start and a stop button. And it just goes over and over and over until you tell it to stop or do something else. And then you just layer on the next sound that's going to go on. And so that live looping was, I forget, but it was Stevie Wonder. And that's basically what the start of like hip hop was.
Oh, right on.
Because if you think of hip hop too,
built in there.
Yeah, hip hop was nothing but taking the chorus from old like funk. They would take the chorus lines and stuff from funk and just put it on a loop over and over and over. That's why whenever you listen to hip hop, it's like the same thing over and over and over.
I can test that, sir. I mean, you probably know the nuts and bolts, but like
live looping starting from Stevie Wonder
and man.
It's
like hip hop was the fabric of my upbringing in Los Angeles. I think there was that was woven into everything, and you were not cool if you didn't understand a bit of it. My girlfriend at the time needed to replace her license. This is related, I think. And we were in the Long Beach DMV, and right next to the picture, right, because it's a government building, right next to the picture of the president was Snoop Dogg. Because he
was president, I think.
Long Beach.
Wasn't he president?
He should have been. Should be now. and Martha Stewart, let's go all the way back, would be his vice president. Oh man, that would be a world. But yeah, he was up in there, and I was like, oh man, this is my home. That's
funny.
This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like there's certain moments you have those realizations of where you live, but by and large, I'm like, it's my hometown.
Yeah.
So
I think music is in a weird spot, man. You got Beyonce now with the country album, and people are looking at it on the surface as like, oh, it's Beyonce with a country album, but then she's looking at it from an artistic and historical standpoint of this is black music.
Yeah.
I mean, country music, like if we really break down country music, which I think is also interesting, comes from the blues, because country music is nothing but like a blues progression, basically.
I thought it was I'm probably thinking of like folk Appalachian or something like that being a very unique thing to a region, country western being probably a bit broader.
I'm not going to pretend to know enough about nuances of Appalachian music.
I think my dad, when he was scoring, when he was picking apart music for like a particular ride or something like that, for whatever reason, we would listen to this crazy gamut of things. You said staccato. I know the word staccato from a Clint Black song.
Okay.
My staccato is bagato, like that whole thing. He's playing with Chet Atkins.
Okay.
Anyway, but so these terms, but like, so the Ralph Stanley, when you talk about like Appalachian music, that was brought in early on when he was doing like Grizzly River Rapids or something. But so that sounded so different than country western to me. I guess I always assumed it was like completely different, and jazz and blues and blah blah blah. But I know it's all a derivative of the blues. I think we talked about yesterday about the 12-bar blues. Yeah,
or 4-bar. Jeez, 12-bar blues.
I'd like
all kind of the same.
I'm kind of a professional, but it's got to be 12. Sometimes 13.
No, 12-bar blues, man. That's. I'm trying to think where that progression came from.
I really want somebody in a comment on this video to say this idiot thinks there are 13 bars in the blues.
Yeah, the 13-bar blues.
Just from that one moment to be like, he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Idiot.
Don't take into context any of the rest of the conversation.
Fair enough.
Of course. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, you talked about Miles Davis and all the like third coast jazz acid like crazy bitches brew weirdness that he had.
Brubeck and Miles Davis kind of sit there as one of the other moments of my process. Like,
there's no difference between that and a Luke Combs song on the radio today.
Well, that's like,
people would be like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, look at the structure of it.
Okay, I can appreciate that, but somebody's going to come at you and be like, "No."
But that's also still not true what I just said, because modern like Nashville country, which is basically all what we call country now, doesn't really.
Different? That's different than
the structure of it.
Texas country or something like that.
I mean, 151. Now somebody's going to come at me and be like, "You don't understand a 12-bar blues,
dude, I want to
blues structure." I'm like,
I want to have a whole.
I don't remember off the top of my and that's terrible. I don't.
With headphones on, going like, "Oh, I hear what you're saying."
1 5 1 5 4 1. Pretty sure is structure.
I completely agree with you.
5 4 1 is a very particular sound.
Okay.
And when you listen to a lot of the music on the radio today, it does still follow that, which is
not just country western, but all.
Okay. That we have genres for a reason, because they do something like there's characteristics that make it that.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just because somebody's got an accent.
Yeah.
You know, that's what people tend to think, but it's like, no, technically from a structural and form standpoint, there's something that makes it that.
Yeah.
Country music, for a lot of it, is not just instrumentation, the nature of the lyrics and all that, but the fact that 12-bar blues is where that comes from. But then you can also look at rock and say, well, rock came from Elvis, and Elvis is a 12-bar blues guy, so that's basically the same thing as well.
Elvis
and then rock and
Elvis came from soul, right?
I don't really know everything about Elvis.
Elvis, like church gospel.
I know enough to know
gospel. He came from gospel and soul. And
right.
So bits and pieces along the way. Everybody saw somebody that they were like, "That's cool. I want to do that."
Yeah.
And then hopefully develop their own thing.
Yeah. Well, rock and the connection to funk.
Yeah.
Funk is just
Isn't that
more
a
of
weird
like a
thing to be crucified over.
What?
For regardless of what art you're in, is, and it happens a lot. I am inspired by this thing, and then you get, and crucified is a hard term. So like you get razzed a little bit for going like, well, you really like that person. You're just trying to emulate that person. But we all were inspired by something.
There's only 12 agreed upon chromatic tones. Actually, it's only 11. Like C, C sharp, D, D sharp. Like these sounds are all the same for everybody.
I know, but it's still going to be.
So what are we talking about?
It's probably like a loyalty to one artist or the other, right? It's that moment of like, man, you sound just like this guy. That sucks. We should all appreciate this guy more.
We just talked about John Williams. Right. And John Williams is the ultimate ripper offer. I just made that up.
Don't do this to me. You're going to like kill. Well, you won't kill John Williams.
No, he knows.
But like, I don't want to. I know he's a professional person.
But you go back and you look, and it's not straight up copyright infringement of like,
gonna
oh wow,
hurt
I
me.
hear that theme coming from Haydn.
You're gonna hurt me right now.
No, it's the sound, dude. Nobody's reinvented anything.
I know, but just like Leia's theme, the Imperial March. Don't ruin this.
No,
for
the
me.
order that things are put together, of course. No, I'm not saying like these themes are stolen from elsewhere.
Good. Because I will
He
block
is
it out like a
Across
bad
the
childhood.
Stars.
I will block it out of my head.
You know that song, the piece "Across the Stars" from
Yeah.
episode 2. So it's a minor third, or sorry, a minor sixth at the beginning of that.
Okay.
That comes down to tonic, which is nothing
gonna say
different
that's
than
from.
it's literally the NBC.
Did he
take
not-
it from NBC? But these intervals exist already.
Yeah.
NBC's a major sixth, but
The
it's all
theme of the news.
every- huh?
There, the theme of the news there. Or something?
NBC. Yeah.
Yeah, but he didn't he do that?
Well, he actually did write the NBC theme song as well, and
He
Sunday
did
Night
like a
Football,
couple like
and
television
the Army.
themes and things like that.
Like I'm
He did
pretty
the
sure he
Army
did the
song.
Army
Okay.
theme when that came out
All right.
20 years ago.
Good for him.
All I'm trying to
Range.
highlight is these intervals are nothing new. We're not
Yeah.
inventing anything new.
I
It's
know.
just the way that we put them together, and it's the influence of like, I don't know. To me, he's the closest to somebody like a Rimsky-Korsakov who wrote Scheherazade, which is
Okay.
one of, to me, it's like the epitome of what's the word I'm looking for? I'm completely blanking. Like storytelling through sound, basically. But
Okay.
there's a word I'm looking for that is escaping me at the moment.
Hmm.
But when you hear Scheherazade and you understand like the backstory of this love and all these things that are happening, Scheherazade is nothing but themes. It's all thematic, and it's
Right.
like characters have themes, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
does that sound like somebody we know, John Williams,
Oh,
who
whoever.
Darth Vader has
did,
a theme, and
Dr. Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia.
I
Who
don't
are
know.
those guys? Because that's kind of what you're saying as well. This huge, epic, every bit of that song is a different piece of the story kind of thing. And while I think it was, obviously they're filmed, so they're broken up into different things. I think there is like the, overture? Did I use the term correctly? Overture.
An overture is a part of it.
Of all the songs throughout. Is that not? What's the, because Williams did it in one, there's like a bit of each of the themes in one song. Sometimes it's during the credits or something, but
Like a
epilogue? No, that's wrong.
dude, words are not happening for me today. I don't know why. I know what you're saying,
Okay.
but and I'm not saying that John Williams is unique in the sense of like making themes.
No.
Obviously, not just people were themes, but moments were themes as well, right?
Yeah.
Across the Stars is a theme of the love between Amidala and Anakin,
Annie.
or Princess. What the hell's her
It's Amidala.
Princess
Padme.
or Padme Amidala,
Padme
right?
Amidala,
So
yeah.
Anyway,
Keira Knightley / Natalie Portman.
they're the same person, I think.
No.
No, I just
She was the handmaid, and then she was the thing. And
Yeah.
there's- The decoy.
that was very much a like 50s, 60s, 70s. I think a lot of the composers during that time did that same thing where their themes. I mean, you listen to
They
Raiders of the
tried.
Lost Ark again. You know,
They
everything's got a
tried.
theme.
They were not Williams.
Yeah, but it helps to tell the story, right? It tells you what to think about that character.
Well, yeah.
Oh
well,
wow, that's dark. That must be a bad character.
Yeah.
I don't even need to know. I don't need to hear anything about that person. I heard that music and I go bad. I hear this moment.
True.
This is good.
You know what's funny? It's because you can have that mixture. Because what the famous theme from those prequels is, what is it? Dueling Fates or something like
Well,
that.
that's from the first episode, right?
And it's Maul and Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? They're fighting, and it's like whatever outcome is what. So it's a mixture of the good and bad, bopping back and forth,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I can see what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Like there's clearly happy, sad, and then this one's the battle for
Yeah.
what happens.
I think the interesting thing is in film, especially though, whenever you take a theme and you put it out of place for what you traditionally know it to be, like what did you just say about Pride and Prejudice, the movie? And there's a hand moment.
The hand, yeah.
Like he wanted to. What was the scene? He wanted to like seize. I don't know.
I believe that he wanted to reach out and show tenderness in the moment, but the decorum of the age, and I think him not really truly realizing that he was allowed to be in love or something, was holding him back in that situation. And I think that was the break in his character, where for the age, you're seeing a bit of flirtatiousness, right? But staunch. And then in that moment, you're seeing the break. Like, oh, yeah. So that moment, the flexing of the hand. It's like, you know, like, it's a meme at this point that everybody's like, that's that moment. You know, I'm trying to think of an equivalent that would hit me in that moment, but it was like, shoot. I think there's a moment in High Fidelity that always really gets me, but it's not positive. It's like, people have been telling me people have been telling me for ages to trust my gut, but I've discovered that my gut has shit for brains. Like there's a bunch of those that hit me. Like I think that was a big moment. That was like, oh, I know what that. I feel that definitely. So that hand flex was every young person's like, ooh.
So you bring that back. So you feel like you actively have those negative kind of moments.
Yeah, we talked about it before. It's something I've dealt with I was raised that way. You know, I have without going into it really distinctly. No. Like I think there was good and bad in my past, like everybody has. My father's amazing, and he's helped me kind of go through that stuff a little bit. But there's that active thought that I am lesser than, and it's hard. And you know, if I go to like the positive reasoning for that, if you can call it a positive or the critical reasoning for that, it's that I grew up in an extremely talented family. I mean, grandfather animator for Disney. Parents both watercolor professionals, and then Disney engineers and Imagineers and painters, and so growing up in that, you're probably going to become a visual artist of some sort, but you're probably going to, depending on the parental method, you're probably going to be like highly criticized along the way, good or bad. Right? Like this is how you should do it. Why are you doing it this way? Let's try this.
Doesn't that kind of sound again, kind of like what I was saying before too, about like the more powerful or the more that brand has like really needs to work, the more the person, remember we talked about like using a person more like a utility piece and not as a person. It's kind of the same of like we're aligned with Disney and we have these expectations and whatever.
Listen, it wasn't the company, as it's referred to a lot. It wasn't the company pushing down on me. Certainly not me by any sense. Because I have mostly nothing but wonderful memories of that entire company and the 9 old men and Walt and different stories that have interacted with my family directly that I hold very dear. So it wasn't the company per se. It was the styles of the people that raised me and helped me along the way. And so we all have that art teacher that like saved us, right? And I certainly have one, Miss Chambers. My parents, amazing artists, incredible artists. My mother, nationally recognized watercolor painter. And my father was an editorial cartoonist, and so a wonderful illustrator in his own right, but a designer for Disney, an engineer for Disney, like created both characters and theme park experiences and the rides themselves. So you have this mastery of those things, and then the teaching of those things was dramatically different. Dad was like, "That's great. That's really cool that you're trying that. I'm glad you're why don't you try something like gentle direction." Criticism that you can take really hard if you're sensitive to it, and I 1000% was, but really good feedback.
But there was kindness there, it sounds like.
It was like, so
bring that back.
But it's hard. It's hard. Art is such an intrinsic part of my life. It is hard not to take it personally when it's criticized in any way. So the biggest example, I love to do portraits. Portraits are very interesting because nobody is symmetrical. And I have a difficulty with that. I tend to exaggerate the asymmetrical side. And in artistic terms, a great way to defeat that is to flip your image, whether on paper or digital, and take a look at it. And sometimes you're surprised. You flip that and you're like, whoa, what have I done?
Completely
like
off.
two different, dramatically different. Unless you're like Brad Pitt or Angelina Jolie, who are symmetrical, and it's really weird to try to draw that. But so we do that. Our own brain does that. And so Dad would gently bring me along and be like, hey, maybe you could think about that eye may be in a different spot. And so you'd get, and I'd take it hard, but it was really good feedback. And I grew from it. I learned from it. On the way up to helping me like build structures and rock work and things, right? Because that was his wheelhouse. Mom was, amazing watercolor painter. But if it was to be done, it was to be done in this way, right? And so, I mean, that's one of the reasons I am not a watercolor painter, is because I personally think watercolor is very rigid. Once it's down, it's down. You can't really change it. You know, oil and acrylic are a little forgiving because you can layer, which is the kind of artist I am. I layer things. Watercolor is like one shot and you're done. Masking and you're done. It's stained. Watercolor is literal stain on it. And so if I did not do it in a particular manner, she was very harsh and critical of that. And so it's hard to remain an artist when you're that young and interacting with that sort of criticism. You know, it was very difficult. And it's, you know, go along years in my life. There's a reason I ran from it from a long time.
Well, and it doesn't feel like art anymore either if there's a right and a wrong.
And that's why you run from it.
Subjectivity out.
That's why you run from it. It's, or I did. Because you saw the mastery. I saw the mastery of these folks and thought, man, I can never. My brothers also had pretty strong ability. I thought, man, I'm never going to live up to that. I got to try something else. And I enjoyed different things. So I went different routes. I wrote for a while, built furniture, all kinds of stuff. But eventually came back to it because that's what's in my heart. And that's kind of what I'm built to do. And I will, you know, progress along in that own right. But it was difficult to overcome. I'm very happy I was raised in such a way.
Keep going.
Has it like stopped recording?
Yeah. Since there's no Noah today, I'm still.
Oh God! Just like stopped recording like an hour ago. Yeah. So it was something to. It sounds sappy to overcome. That I haven't done yet. You know, I've managed to decide that I exist in this world and I should, and so I'm going to do the best I can and learn every day.
What does that say that you judged it as sappy?
Now
I'm
because when I tend to assign images to words. I'm very bad at that. You know, like we decide one word is negative or positive, right? Everybody has kind of a nuance of it. You know, we can know that murder, bad. You know, like frolicking, good. Frolicking can go both ways. But you're right. But when you talk about like overcome, when I say the word overcome, like I hear somebody that's like overcome addiction and like has come from this, you know, this place of darkness and brought up to the light. And I have what I consider to be those moments in my life, but it certainly wasn't, you know, the dredges of the human experience back. It was basically me, you know, raised in an overly critical place and having to.
So were you judging your experience and saying it wasn't as bad as somebody that was?
Yeah, I constantly do that.
So is this in a weird way saying even my pain isn't good enough to be as bad as someone else?
See, I think that's why I'm an artist,
you know?
Man. That's to be a stereotype.
Even my pain is still not good enough to be pain.
You know, no, like, that's a genuine thought. You know, I will.
I'm
have
laughing,
that.
but like I feel like
I
maybe
get
just
it.
temper
I
it.
think I've talked about it with Candace, my therapist. Shout out again. Is that, and I mentioned it earlier. The I was starving, but the tortured artist. You feel, I don't know where this comes from, but you feel like you should be that at some point, right? I'm not.
You should be tortured,
right? Because that's the
because that's
the
thing. Marker of a
I've
real
got to
artist.
be the thing, right?
Yeah.
And so if I've been happy this whole time, then I'm not going to be a great artist. I'm going to create big and florid and wonderful things, which there's a market for that. That's great. I've never been that. I'm proud of all the people that do that and exist in that world. That's not the sort of art I want to create.
Not that you couldn't.
So
you just don't.
Not that I couldn't. I just don't. That's my perspective on life that I draw from. But yeah, that taking up space thing is a double-edged sword. You kind of I sit there and go, man, I'm not tortured enough. So who knows what the force swing is. Can I say the force swing? The other end of the pendulum. Yeah. Like if I wasn't all the way back here, then I'm going to be able to get up to here. Am I going to be as successful as I kind of want to be in the back of my head without taking up too much space?
So how does one stop? Because that all just sounds like
therapy.
Being in your head.
Therapy.
And not just allowing life to happen.
Therapy.
What's that word?
I don't know. Therapy. Does that work that way? Does this provide more bass? Therapy.
It does, actually. The proximity effect.
Look at that. Yeah. I'm an audio technician.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the great thing and the terrible thing about being a human is that...
Which I'm bad at. That's a good
At note. Being a person?
Yes.
I think you're great at... You're probably too good at being a human,
actually,
which is
what's
what
interesting.
It is.
It's not being alive and breathing. It is... it is admitting... Well, no. It's the whole... Like doing something that's not perfect the first time, right? Mm-hmm. Is human, right? You got to try something and fail at it. Probably fail at it to get to know the feeling, move on, draw from it, and become better at something. And I'm horrible at that because I don't want to fail. Excuse me. I don't want to fail. And you have to be brave enough to do. I believe, I have heard that you have to be brave enough to do that.
To do what? To fail?
To fail. To be brave enough to be bad at a thing. And it's hilarious. Like it's kind of like if you're a tourist in a country. You know, I try to be a good tourist and I try to go and learn a certain amount of words. But there's that nervousness that you're like,
when you go to execute
I'm going to say something in this language. And I'm going to think of that hokey movie of those Americans.
Yeah.
You know, and
like in this moment, I am that guy.
Bonjour. Yeah. Or what is it? A Christmas movie, the Fragile.
Yeah.
Oh man. It's like, regardless of what I do in this, or irregardless of what I do in this situation, I'm going to sound like a bumpkin. Like what's fast. Okay.
That's that hyper awareness though.
Right.
That's the part for me that sucks knowing I'm about to walk in and feel that.
Okay. When you walk into I almost said hardware store. If you walk into a Best Buy and there's a million televisions and they're showing you the same thing, but they're all slightly different. Because the way the color, you would notice the color setup is and whatnot. So one of the things, there's a disparity in my life. I am Californian, Southern Californian, from Burbank, California.
Yeah.
I am not, I don't think there's a nuance between the valley, which is where I'm from, and like the coastline, right? Venice Beach or Newport, all that stuff. I don't think there's a difference between that, right? So I grew up there. I do not believe that I have any particular inflection in my voice that's Californian. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not like, hey man, what's up? Like, this is super cool, surfing. I have a couple of friends that are like that now. I don't know where it comes from. You know, tasty waves. I don't know where that comes from. But like, okay, but the difficulty with that is there's a few conversations I've had out here where somebody's like, oh no. Yeah, you definitely have a Californian accent. Excuse me?
Yeah.
And that is a hard thing to rectify. That's like saying you've always had that zit on your face for as long as I remember. And you're like, there's nothing there. What are you talking about? Yeah. So when I talk about like a mastery of something or doing something, speaking that language in a different place, regardless in my head, regardless of how, you know, bonjour, je m'appelle Benjamin. Like, what I've affected, I probably still look like a different image on the TV to the French person who's seeing the American going like, bonjour, it's nice to meet you, you know, or, you know, regardless of that, that's like, I am attempting to do a thing, but I still look like a jerk. That's bravery. So.
Well, understanding, first of all, I think being aware that that moment is coming, being aware from their perspective, what you probably look like.
Yeah.
I think that's okay. I think it's embarrassing. I think it's, you know, any one of those kind of words. But at the same time, I think what can take the edge off, at least for me, when you talked about like being willing to fail in a weird way, that's a similar kind of feeling to failing, you know?
Yeah. The willingness to fall.
You're putting yourself out there to feel something that's uncomfortable, that isn't success or happy or whatever. You know, I would kind of lump failure and embarrassment to be the same, a little bit more than happy and successful, if we had to put them only in 2 buckets.
Okay.
So when it comes to something like failure, I go, okay, what does failure actually look like? If I had to spell that out and I pretended this was happening, what does that really look like? And is that okay? And then by like spelling, it kind of takes the edge off a little bit and being like, okay, well, what's the worst that could happen in that failure?
Exact phrase.
What?
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, what's the worst that could happen? And you play that out, and first of all, you've already lived it. So if it were to actually happen, that would actually be the second time you've really experienced it.
That's fair.
So there's that.
I know you're yeah. This is the same conversation I have with Candace.
Oh, really?
No, I really had that the what's the worst that could happen, and I'm really good at coming back and saying like, well, this is the worst.
Yeah, I always answer that with well.
This is let me tell you the worst that could happen. It could be this and this and this, and I think this is from somewhere else, but one of my favorite brands that I look up to is Go Fast, Don't Die, and there is a shirt that they do that's just "Did you die?" or "But did you die?"
Yeah.
So it's like,
really, at the end of the day, that is the worst that could happen. We said it before. If you're dead, you know, it's hard to do things.
What's that? There's another one that's like kind of an old-timey phrase, you know, you're wandering around a hardware store and, you know, like the old guy there and you're like, hey, how are you doing today? And they look at you and be like, well, I woke up this morning. Yeah. So that's good. And so, yeah, it's that kind of thing that you're like, should I take that as, I suppose it depends on how maybe spiritual you are.
Well, that's the opposite of like just extreme gratitude for even waking up. Right.
Well, I mean, that's great. That is the gratitude for waking up. And it's like, man, that's all. It's like I should celebrate that, but it's like that's all I got. That's all I got today as I woke up.
Yeah. Oh. But I think those extremes, I call them extremes because we don't think about that, and that really is step number 1 to doing anything.
Mindfulness.
Being in a position to do it. Yeah. Well, how do you get in a position to wake up for your body to do what it does?
Waking up's not the...
So that, I mean, if you got that, step number 1, check. Cool.
I get it. I'm supposed to be better at that stuff, like writing those, journaling.
When we talk about hokey and cheesy and hard for me, Kaylor Slagle, who was one of the founders of this podcast and Branded 78 with me, always a super positive dude. And he and I would have conversations where I would basically reject some of how he would talk about it.
Test, maybe.
Because rejects, I don't know. I don't know. But I would always question whatever, push back on whatever word you want to put there. It's like,
everybody needs a healthy set of skepticism in their life.
But like how you were judging it in terms of being hokey or cheesy or whatever word.
It's Han Solo's word.
Like
hokey religion. It's the Force.
Yeah.
Hokey religion.
The practice of gratitude in respect to just waking up feels sometimes, because it's growing on me. And again, this is like a signal of, okay, like I was pushing back on that and it feels hokey or whatever, and it's saying something, obviously. It feels that way because the opposite narrative is something that's more comfortable and accepting.
Yes.
So the more that you change that narrative and you know, the idea of positive affirmations and saying this, as much as it feels in the moment today lame, hokey, forced, inauthentic, whatever, you have to go through that process to overcome the current line of narratives that exist whether subconsciously or consciously. And then over time, and what I'm saying, like now it doesn't feel as weird. It's because whenever you start doing that and you actually start having that kind of seep in subconsciously, that hokiness sort of wears off, and it actually becomes like, okay,
there's a sneaky change in your life.
It's really fascinating
because you want that, right? So I, as an artist, want to be successful. I do not want to ask you to help me, right? I don't want to be like, please buy my artwork, please. Because that's difficult to me. That's like, for me, it's an imposition, which is a crazy thing to say. But it's like, so we talked about earlier, that not necessarily positive affirmations, but maybe like the upbringing of someone, right? The way it can be uncomfortable, like that overly positive thing. So a friend of mine works in behavioral science with children. And the number one thing that makes a kid super uncomfortable who has been in an environment who is just kind of like laissez-faire, or kind of like, oh, there's kids here with their parents just being whatever, is when the therapist starts to go, wow, that's amazing. I love the way you drew that pig with the curly tail in the back. You are a great artist. I love the way you used the pencil to do that, because every kid, going back to me, every kid is like, excuse me? Why are you?
Because that delivery is so foreign to them.
But it's supposed to be that way, right? If we all grew up that way, we'd be dramatically. Maybe there's a nuance. Maybe there's like, hey, man, that's great. You did a great job there.
Yeah.
Right? It's a little different.
I feel that with TikTok, because TikTok every so often will feed me these like dad moments where it's like a dad with a child, and the dad is like with that delivery of being what I view and feel as over the top.
Right.
Because it is not how I personally, I mean, you hear how I talk on the show. Like, I'm not the most vibrant speaker, I guess.
It's uncomfortable to say things that way.
And I probably talk that way because of, experience and all the things for why we do the things we do.
We're not used to that language.
So like when I see that version of what a dad is supposed to be with a child.
Supposed to be.
What is supposed to be, right? Like
that
goes back to what I was saying before the beginning of this whole thing of like chasing what is right. And anyway. I don't know where I was going now. All I know is my brain hurts after these conversations because we go so deep into different things. And
ADHD madness, right?
But I like
down
it.
The rabbit hole.
I always like when we get to chat because we get into these all the time.
It is kind of fun, the whole cyclical nature of it all, talking about everything.
Anybody listening to this is probably like, I can't keep up with what the hell is going on for an hour.
But I don't know. I like the idea. I like the ability to like dissect things. I think your job is so cool, where you can come through and have these different perspectives and ask a bunch of fun questions and have the atmosphere to do that without feeling, because you're supposed to ask questions in this situation. Whereas if you're just meeting somebody at a bar, you're like, hey, tell me about your life.
Yeah.
How does that work? And how does that work? It's a different thing. But this is a wonderful environment to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, see, I always like doing this anyway, because the surface level, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
I do some of that with guests, but that's to lay a foundation, just like a high level look. Mm-hmm. And because I really try not to know very much about people, because I really do want to have genuine conversation.
Do you know anything about me?
No, I really don't.
No, that's fair. I just showed up one day.
Yeah, you're just here. I do try to like quickly be able to get into something that's a little less surface level into this kind of thing. Because I feel like these kind of conversations are more relatable in a lot of ways. And I know it's, a business show, but
sure.
I find that these kind of things, make the guest more relatable because it's something at a foundational...
I'm not very relatable.
It's something at a foundational humanity sort of level that can connect us. And we see, like what you said before about Paris Hilton and what I was saying about the Kardashians. Like the Kardashians, you get to see their health issues and marital issues and those kind of things. Yeah. but you also see the aspirational. I would hope that something like this kind of platform does a similar thing where it's like, okay, we know the butt in the seat has a reputation for doing XYZ professionally, but what's under that hood? And that relatable kind of thing, I think if I were an audience member of this, would be, oh, okay, so that person does that job, which I have put on a pedestal, but I never knew how, like, I thought a person like that just lived a perfect way. But then you see, oh, wow, that person has a lot of other stuff going on. Just like me, AKA, I can also achieve something great. Because
we're all a version of Pigpen. Pigpen? Pigpen.
From Charlie Brown? Yeah.
I think it's a beautiful mess.
Yeah.
But that swirling stuff isn't all like dirt, which I think it is with him. But it's like, it's everything. It is like there's caffeine swirling around me and childhood trauma and like probably charcoal dust and paint and sawdust and all kinds of things. The texture of my life is swirling around me and it keeps smacking people in the face. That's my artwork, I think.
Was it Pigpen that also had the safety blanket?
It's Linus.
Or
is Linus the piano player?
He was the pianist, right?
Oh, gosh. No.
Wow, we're all
Pigpen.
We're just blanking
dirty.
on all the names. Yeah.
Somebody had the blue blanket. Let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Shoot.
In the peanut gallery.
No.
Get it?
Oh, God. You went there.
Yeah.
That show is so amazing, but like that's probably a formative moment in my life is watching Lucy pull up that dang football. It's just the world to me.
I never understood that.
It's just
like
her being a jerk, man.
Yeah. But it's life too, right?
Pure. It's pure. Like I am going to take joy from making you fall.
Yeah, but what does it say about young Charles, for continuing to go and have that optimism that the ball is not going to get moved this time?
That's why I relate to Charles so
I
much.
never thought that deeply about any of this kind of stuff until well, it was like maturity, of course.
Peanuts was like, I think it was supposed to be a representation of like what Schultz's childhood and aspirational childhood,
probably.
All that stuff. So everybody represented a thing and a texture of his life. So yeah, we're supposed to feel failure and joy and all that stuff from it.
So
mischievousness.
In wrapping up, is there anything in particular you wanted to say about Sleepless Jack? By the way, we never went there. We never talked about it.
I'm Ben. No, I mean, shoot, man, we went everywhere. I mean, the biggest thing I think to talk about with that you were asking me was I've worked at a couple of apparel companies in the area, right? I'm known for some funny Kentucky-shaped shirts, right? I did a bunch of stuff with Shop Local, with Kentucky Branded, and doing NIL deals and working with players, developing merchandise. And I've taken over a decade of that experience, and with a wonderful friend of mine who's running a print shop, we've started to do it on our own. And so I'm making the case of being a print shop with a brand on the side that kind of represents the little bits and pieces of me along the way, from motorcycles and coffee and tattoos and baking, all kinds of things represented in the brand, but also having this creative space where we can create, apparel and other sort of print goods for people, especially small businesses. I've done this so long for kind of larger companies and larger entities and players that have this big appeal, and I really want to take that, I won't call it expertise, but that skill set that I've developed along this time, and just kind of help people develop cool stuff. I like making t-shirts. There's probably a broader swath of things that I can design, but
what is it about? I mean, just listen to the last hour and a half or whatever this has been, and obviously you're pretty tapped into your head and mental health and things. So what in t-shirts obviously are a pretty strong representation of what we feel and how we want to present ourselves to the world. So why a t-shirt? I mean, there's a million other ways that we can put art together for a purpose.
It's a really
why
good,
that medium?
It's a really good question. I mean, I love making artwork in all forms. I'm illustrating a children's book right now with a very good friend of mine, Kelsey Malicote, who talked me into it, who dragged me across hot coals until I gave into it, because it's another thing I was terrified of doing. But so T-shirts, man, it's one of those things you fall into. I think I came back to artwork, thought I was going to be a fine artist, but looking at the brands that I enjoy, looking at the stuff that I like interacting with, a lot of that distilled down to, and this sounds bonkers, but distilled down into graphic T-shirts, right? It's I don't know when this is from. I repeat this phrase over and over in my head sickeningly. It is a long time ago. There was, I think it's a Vans commercial that flashes across the screen, "Clothes are your armor," which is a bit, it's out there, but I really do. Like we talk.
That's what I just said too, right? Like presenting yourself to the world.
And that's why. So while that phrase keys, it's like the heart on your sleeve kind of thing. We used to live in the world during my dad's time where a T-shirt was a T-shirt. It was a white T-shirt, and sometimes people would write on it for like PE, and it became like, a word shirt that's just like Tennessee sucks or something. Yeah. Like you buy that shirt because you think Tennessee sucks, right? So like people wear their hearts on their sleeves, and I think along the way, nuance was created, art was created, and it became more specialized.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Lexington Business Show. Go right now, rate and review the podcast. It's how we grow and thrive and how we get more listeners and get to do a lot more cool stuff here on the show. Thank you.